Hello, this is Frank, K4FMH, with the ICQ podcast team. I recently caught up with Don Keith, November 4 Kilo Charlie, at the Jackson, Mississippi Hamfest. He's a fixture at this event, selling his books mostly about amateur radio. But Don's also an award-winning broadcaster and a prolific author of books about World War II and history. His co-authored book with George Wallace, titled Firing Point, was just made into a major motion picture, Hunter Killer. This has brought international attention to this Birmingham, Alabama ham operator, so he was engulfed in a big crowd of visitors at his table at the Hamfest. Some of the following audio suffers from significant background noise as a result. We have removed some of it in post-production, but we apologize for the amount that remains. Don is Scot-Irish by heritage and reveals the significant movie tie-in to London and Europe. It's just been panned by Russian President Putin, something that will certainly draw viewers of the movie in the West. Let's get started with a 5-second opening clip of the movie trailer starring the Scottish actor Gerard Butler. Hold on to your seats. Battle stations. All right, we're here with Don Keith at the Jackson Hamfest in Jackson, Mississippi. And Don, we're glad that you're here with me here on the ICQ podcast. And look, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I've known you for a number of years as a fellow ham, and I've known you have a history in broadcasting, an award-winning broadcaster, in fact, living near Birmingham. And I've read your blog about ham radio, but I've also read some of your non-ham radio books. All right, and you've had your recent book, most recent book, with co-author, really hit big time. It became a major motion picture featuring Gerard Butler as a central character, and I must say, we love it. Tell us a little bit about what's it like to be a ham and a broadcaster, but hit the big time with one of your books.
Well, you know, being a ham is how I got to be a broadcaster. I was first licensed when I was 13 years old. And when I went in to apply for my first job as a disc jockey, the guy saw that I was a ham radio operator, and he said, well, you could probably run a control board just fine, so come on in and do the 3 to 6 shift. Well, 3 to 6 is afternoon drive time. I thought I'd hit the big time. He said, oh no, 3 to 6 in the morning. That's how everybody breaks in here. So I did, but that led to a 22-year on-air career. I also did some engineering and sales and programming and management, everything you can do in broadcasting. And all of that, I give credit to amateur radio. My dad was a television repairman, one of the first in the southeastern U.S., and that sort of gave me an intro into the technological side of things. And he was interested in ham radio. I got interested in ham radio. We happened to have a ham in town who gave lessons and classes. I took those, and I was hooked from then on. That was a mere 57 years ago. I was only 2 years old when I got my license. But I've enjoyed every minute of it. I love the hobby.
Well, tell our audience a little bit about how you got into the writing part. I know you've done some very, very impressive and very well-received amateur radio books, and on another network, I've interviewed you about some of those, and I've done some reviews and things like that. But how did the writing bug hit you from broadcasting?
Well, actually, I was a writer before I was a broadcaster, but just not professionally or successfully. I've always wanted to write. I'm a storyteller. I'm a natural-born storyteller from my Scotch-Irish heritage. My dad was a big talker who loved to meet people and find out about people and then relay their stories on to other people. And I think that's where he came from. But I just really love doing something emotional, something that's going to affect somebody in a positive way, something that's going to make people laugh or cry or get mad or get happy. I could do that as a radio disc jockey. Now, I had to do it over a 10-second intro to a record or before a commercial break or whatever. With writing, I'm able to sit in a little room and type it into the computer. Either way, you put that content out there, you can't take it back. So you have to do it as well as you possibly can.
Look, tell us a little bit about, show us a copy for video, or for a video audience, and this is your book, Hunter Killer, it's with a co-author, and tell us a little bit about that book, give us a brief overview, and how did that get to be a big-time movie?
Well, Frank, that was a 10-year overnight success is how that happened. My co-author and I, George Wallace, was a former nuclear submarine captain, and he and I we've actually written 3 books together, had 3 books published. We'll have a new one coming out this summer. And George happened to run into a Hollywood producer at a submarine event. The Hollywood producer was actually looking to do a World War II submarine story, but he found out George and I had a book. He read the book. He said, "Nope, I don't think it's a movie, but what else you got?" George sent him an unpublished manuscript of a book called Firing Point. He read it. He loved it. He wrote a script. He said, "This will be a movie." And sure enough, he turned around and sold it. Unfortunately, the studio went into bankruptcy, and there we lay for about 10 years. So between book and movie was a decade. We've been very pleased. The studio that ended up with the film, we think, did a good job. They took the primary storyline out of the 5 that are in the book and turned it into a real whiz-bang, shoot-'em-up, fun movie. We're very proud that the cinema score on the movie, which that's the people who actually pay to see it to come back out of the theaters and get interviewed, we got an A cinema score, which is rare. We're proud of that.
Look, for our European audience, tell us a little bit about the links in the Hunter-Killer movie for those in Europe, particularly those in the United Kingdom.
Well, the movie was actually shot, about 50% of it, in London, on a soundstage in London, where they recreated a control room of a U.S. Virginia-class nuclear submarine. The U.S. Navy had folks on the set that helped make it accurate. The Navy even loaned the production company blueprints of the control room of a Virginia-class submarine. The really cool thing is, even right down to the color of the cables that ran among the various monitors is completely accurate to what our submarines look like. So a very strong British connection there. Plus, Gerard Butler is the star. He's a Scot, which is Great Britain. Gary Oldman, who is English, had a major role. Gary Oldman, the Academy Award winner. So there's quite a bit of British connection. By the way, the other half of the movie was shot in Bulgaria. People say, what? There's actually a thriving film industry in Bulgaria, and Millennium Films, who did the movie, has a major production facility in Sofia, so it looked a lot like Russia, and that's where a lot of the film took place.
Here's what I'm hearing. The heritage of the Scot-Irish landed in the U.S., generated lots of activity, one of whom is Don N4KC, who wrote a book that was then filmed partly back in London, starring a brilliant Scottish actor. So we have such a strong connection between the United Kingdom and lads in America, and here's just another example of it.
The director is from South Africa.
Wow.
The production company is partly owned by Israelis. There's all sorts of international aspects. Even the film had a tough time getting on the screens in Russia because they thought it portrayed Russia negatively. It really doesn't. It portrays one Russian very negatively. It actually does a pretty good picture of some Russian sailors there.
You bet.
And even Vladimir Putin reviewed the movie. He didn't like it.
Well, tell us what you've got some things coming out. Are you writing something new in amateur radio? You've had just so many things in ham radio that's been popular.
Well, I covered a couple of areas. I did one book, Explore the Magic of Amateur Radio, writing the shortwaves, aimed at people who say I've got a cell phone, so I don't need a ham radio. And then my second book, Get on the Air Now, was aimed at those hams who get a license and never really get involved in the hobby. They just kind of drift away, and I wanted to find out why. I did a lot of research and found out some of the top reasons, and I tried to address those in that book. I've also done a ham radio dictionary, nobody's ever done before. Tried to take some of the terms and jargon and make them understandable. And the latest book is Dial Dancing. It's just a fun look at the hobby through some fiction, some short stories.
Tell us what else you're up to these days. You're here at the Ham Fest, and you've been here as a fixture for years, selling your books, meeting hams, talking to them, gathering material for new books, I'm sure.
That's exactly what I do. I try to talk to as many folks as I can and see what the need is out there. It's hard enough to get people to read books anyway, but I really want to write a book that people are interested in reading, that they get a lot out of, and that they'll pass along to other people. That's how I do my Elmering. I think we all should use whatever talents we have to spread the good news about the hobby and what it involves, what you can do in the hobby. People just don't have a real good perception of what we do, and that's our fault.
Indeed. Anything else you want to tell our audience that I may have not thought about?
Well, you asked what I'm doing. I'll have a few projects I can announce very shortly as far as movies are concerned. I've got a racing television series that I'm pitching very hard, that we've got some very good interest in, and a couple of World War II film projects that I've done screenplays for, some based on my World War II books. I write a lot about World War II history and submarines and aircraft carriers and that sort of thing, because I want to preserve that history. I even maintain a website called untoldmillions.net to help people and encourage them on collecting oral histories, what I call eyewitness history, people that have actually witnessed wars, the civil rights struggle, the Depression. We lose our last World War II veterans statistically in 2025, and that's a harsh reality. We have got to capture what those guys saw.
And one of the things about the World War II era, I'm a professional demographer. I studied that stuff as a college professor most of my career and still do a little bit of it. And ham radio was such a prominent part of those cohorts of young men, particularly, but some women as well. And the surplus gear that came after both World War I and World War II was nothing but just a catalyst, a Roman candle, if you will, just to set ham radio on fire. So there's a blend in what your historical epoch is in terms of your focus on that writing with amateur radio.
I really hadn't thought about that, but that's absolutely true. The events in history that have given our hobby new life, World War II was certainly one. Plus, we had a lot of guys who came back from the war that wanted to do something different than what they had done before, and the hobby was there and ready. Television, we all know television took off after the war. So did broadcast radio, which is where I made my living for about 40 years. Even things like the changeover of the FM that was being used by police departments and taxi cabs and all sorts of two-way users led to a lot of surplus gear that boosted the 2-meter activity of this country. Suddenly all these commercial repeaters appear on 2 meters.
And if you walk around the Jackson Ham Fest, you will see some of the actual World War II equipment for sale in what we call our boneyard. So it still has life and it's still around.
Absolutely. And the history of our country follows radio and ham radio. The first broadcasters were hams.
Well, Don, you've got a great fan group among hams who see you as one of them, and you are one of them, but they see you emerging as an internationally prominent writer and one who proffers now major motion pictures, and you've got some more work there. And so you've got a big fan club in hams, and I know a lot
of people are
proud of you.
The challenge is to crowbar our hobby into some of these movies and TV shows I'm working on. It's tough to do, but I'll find a way.
Well, you have done that, and I know you'll continue. I want to thank you for appearing with me on the ICQ podcast, and we just encourage you and welcome you from here forward.
Thank you very much.